Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. I just want to take a few minutes to go over a couple things that are due this week, just as a reminder, and also maybe clarify um, one part of our discussion board this week. One of your classmates posed a really good question to me, so I want to share that with you so that in case some of you aren't familiar with some concepts such as quality of life and those type of things, hopefully this little snippet will help. Before I get started, as you know, Hurricane Florence has been pretty steady there on the East Coast. So if you have any family or friends, or if you've been impacted by the storm, please know that our thoughts and prayers are with you. And if any of you have been impacted by that specifically, and you need additional time for any assignments or anything like that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can always call or text if that's easier. Okay. Just a reminder too that tomorrow our initial discussion thread is due, so make sure you find time to post. And let me just go over that question that one of your classmates raised, because I thought it was a really good point, and maybe it'd be helpful if I just provide a little bit of clarification. The second part of that discussion question asks, what is the potential impact of these specialized courts on the business environment and quality of life in your community? So there's a list of those specialized courts above. And so I'll just give an example. Let's take drug court, for example. And how does drug court benefit quality of life in your community? Well, if you know anything about drug court, it's where certain offenders who are charged with drug offenses might meet the criteria for drug court. And the focus of drug court is to obviously make a person a more productive citizen in our community. And so if drug court is effective and we can get a person all the way through drug court, they tend to be a more productive member of our community. They engage in less risky behavior that might have got them in trouble. And the thing about drug addiction is that it impacts everyone. And I mean, it doesn't make a difference if you're a doctor or you're a janitor and everything in between. Drug addiction can impact any type of occupation, any type of person. So as a benefit to the community, for example, it clearly serves as a means to help people fight drug addiction other than putting them in jail, and trying to make them productive members of our community. And if we get them to be productive members of our community, they're not out engaging in that risky behavior that got them in trouble to begin with. And so our communities tend to be a bit safer. In terms of the business environment and the impact it might have on the businesses, think about the fact that drug addiction, again, can touch anybody. You can touch a teacher. You could be a police officer. You could be a doctor, or you can be a lawyer, or you can be a plumber or electrician, or an array of professions. And if a business loses a seasoned employee to drug addiction, that has a definite impact on that business environment. And so it's important that such specialized courts, such as drug courts, has the ability to keep a person in the community, keep them working, keep them engaged, eliminate the need for drugs and reduce the level of addiction, and make businesses profitable again by allowing them to keep their employees, right? Last thing a business wants to do, and I don't care what kind of business you have, is if you have a tenured employee, somebody that's good at their job, it behooves society to keep that person employed while we try to address any type of addiction problem that's going to remove them from the community and from their home and from their work, right? Because it's really difficult for a person to start over. Once you spend time in jail, you tend to lose your job, family issues pop up, things like that. So hopefully this sort of tells you a little bit about what we're looking for in terms of how these specialized courts can impact business environment and quality of life in your community. I've been to several drug court graduations during my time as police chief, and I'm telling you, I think it's a great program. And if we can keep people working, we can keep people in the community, make them better community members, then that's a big plus for us. So That's a little bit about drug courts, and I think how that ties into this. Hopefully, you can tie some of these basic ideas into some of the other courts that we have this week for you to choose from. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Real quick, you have your milestone 1 that's due this week, so please give that some thought. Go back and look at my notes and feedback to you on either the other short papers or the discussion board questions. What you will find is that each of these critical elements for this milestone 1, you have covered in some format or another, either as a discussion board thread or as a short paper. May not be exactly the same, but the substance is there and what you need to know is there. One of the things that is required for this milestone 1 talks about the differences between federal and state judicial systems and the importance of having levels. You touched a little bit about that when you learned about federal courts and state courts. Also take a look at my short module lecture this week, so I specifically talk about that. I also specifically address subject matter jurisdiction, and subject matter jurisdiction really has to do with what you're doing this week in your discussion board. These specialized courts that we talk about, bankruptcy, immigration, drug court, these are all specialty courts or subject matter courts. So you can incorporate what you've learned this week in the discussion board thread and hopefully tie it into your milestone 1 assignment. Venue, again, how's venue determined? I talk about that and the implications of venue. The implications of venue you talked about last week in your discussion board, where the question was about the geography of your state and how does it impact venue and the implications for venue. I also gave you a newspaper article from the LA Times that I hope will help you understand how venue and the implications of venue, and that was the homeless court, or a court in Los Angeles where several homeless people were cited into for different types of quality of life violations, such as sleeping on sidewalks, sleeping in parks, urinating in public, and things like that. That's the kind of thing we're looking for here in terms of what are the implications of venue. So you can talk about the geographical spacing between where a court is and where people live. That's an implication for venue, and that's sort of what we're looking for there. The key thing here, again, we talked about the jurisdiction a little bit, and the venue for our scenario. Again, we talk about venue in my short module lectures and in our announcements, and I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it now. The venue for our case, because this is a federal crime. Bank robbery is a federal crime with a specific federal statute controlling that. It's also a state crime, but we're going to focus on the fact that it's a federal crime because federal crime supersedes state crime. So it's going to be a federal crime for our purposes. So remember that. So it's a federal crime. It's got to be in federal court. The crime occurred in Washington, D.C. That's the venue. The proper court would be the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. All right, United States District Court for the District of Columbia, because it is a federal crime and the federal courts will have jurisdiction. And the venue is where the crime occurred, and the crime occurred in Washington, D.C. Okay, I hope that helps. Again, thank you guys, and thanks, Tiandra, for that good question. I hope you guys benefit from it, and everyone have a good week. If you have any questions or concerns, never hesitate to reach out to me. All right, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.